Well, good evening, everybody. The topic for today, in fact, is basically about disruption, exploring new horizons. How can India seize the upside of disruption? And as we all know, there have been multiple disruptors that the Indian pharmaceutical industry has dealt with, good and bad. US pricing pressure, API prices shooting up this year, the introduction of Ayushman Bharat. So there's a lot to talk about within the space. But I just want to get your thoughts, each one of y'all, in terms of what y'all think have been the biggest disruptors in the Indian pharmaceutical space, and whether or not that disruption has in fact resulted in an opportunity. Mr. Yao, let's start with you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this time that I have the honor to give some ideas about this kind of disruptions. And from Fosun Pharma side, we are a Chinese player. And also very gladly, we have our partner here, Grand Pharma, so that we think that this kind of the disruptions, we call it, is actually how to implement this kind of disruptive innovation technologies in the development of the pharmaceutical industries and also together with the healthcare industry. Yeah. So from Fosun Pharma side, we have our combination of this kind of diagnostic reagents and also medical device, and together with our core business in pharmaceutical industries. So once we do this kind of combination, we think about, we pay much more attention on this kind of disruptive technologies to imply in these three areas together to achieve the treatment of this kind of different diseases. So we focus on some therapeutic fields, and we, with this kind of combination of the pharmaceutical, medical device, and diagnostic reagents, we can find some way to deal with this kind of different disease. So this is a kind of different mindset to deal with the disease. So I think this is very important for us because we, both Chinese player and Indian players, we are undergoing this kind of transition from generic player to the innovation drugs developer and also player. So we should find some different way to follow our competitors, and also maybe we can surpass them in this kind of disruptive way. Thank you.
Mr. Patel, what according to you has been a big disruption which has taken place, and is there an opportunity there?
So I see there are two major disruptors which we have seen over a period of last few years. Let's start with India because at home, and I see that complete lack of stable policy on pharma sector is the biggest burning issue for all my colleagues sitting here. Whether it's drug and cosmetic act related rules or drug price control related rules, there is no definite answer to this. Whether this drug will be in price control or not, if this in price control, how the price will be calculated. If there is going to be a change on the label, then there is going to be once a year or 7 times a year. Whether every change will happen overnight or over a period of time and things like that. So I think lack of policy support is one of the major disruptors as far as India is concerned. And as a result, we have seen that the Indian pharma market overall has not grown as much it was growing before. So that's one of the disruptors we have. If I see from a global market, the biggest thing happened because of the US channel consolidation, that the competition went up significantly, or maybe the buyers reduced, and as a result, the price erosion has really taken a toll on the margins which were otherwise available in the US market, and has basically made us to look at opportunities in the area where more difficult and less competitive product we can enter into. I see there is an opportunity there because Indian manufacturers have a cost advantage, and as a result of that, maybe when the prices will have fallen down now, Indian players are much better placed compared to the peers to survive and actually grow into this segment.
Okay. Well, I'll just take that point forward about the lack of stable policy in India. Mr. Sameer Mehta probably doesn't think so. He's been very active in the Indian market in terms of acquisitions when it comes to Torrent. You all are building your base in India with Unichem as well as your earlier acquisitions. But is that a key risk according to you, and how are you projecting it in terms of your growth?
So what Pankaj Bhai said, that goes without saying, that has been an important paramount issue affecting all of us, whether it's our ongoing business or it's the acquired business. So issue doesn't change. I mean, government policies, particularly in India, have gone through a phase of instability in the last 2 years. I think whether it's the acquired business or it's the base business, at the end, it would call for an agile organization to stay on the top of the policy changes and ensure that your responses are swift and you try to do the best that you can under the situation. So I think that's how we look at it, and that's how, and including I'm sure our other friends also have a similar view, that it's not that we will be constrained to do M&A because of that. And if there are good opportunities of capital allocation, all of us would be keen to continue to pursue, but carefully. I mean, that's how I see the...
So you think India would probably be a better growth market as compared to the others?
India certainly would continue to be a very important growth market. For us, it's relatively more important than, say, Dr. Reddy or Zydus for that matter. But it certainly would, for all of us, continue to be an important growth driver.
Mr. Patel?
So I think we are all Indian companies. India will always remain the key market for us. So I think that is not what my concern is. My concern is there is much more opportunity to really make Indian market much bigger. But I think that's what we have lacked the chance to do that over the last few years.
Okay, Mr. Vedaish, what has your experience been in terms of the Indian market, in terms of the kind of investments that you're looking at?
Yeah, I guess whatever points have been mentioned is quite pretty relevant as long as you're operating in India. There are a couple of disruption I'm seeing. One is a positive disruption, which I'm a strong believer in what I call it as a financial enablement is very important, particularly in the healthcare industry. With Ayushman Bharat 1.0 is definitely indicated something about India wants to look at healthcare in a relatively holistic way. Now, however simplistic the whole thing looks like, I see there is an opportunity for us to look at 2.0 and 3.0, where I see that as a big opportunity for pharmaceutical industry and the other members of the ecosystem to start playing for the benefit of the patients in this country. So I think that's a big positive disruption because it does create the procedure cost and all those. There's a lot of discussion that happens. Second, which I think is the biggest disruption, which I personally believe that we need to address, is the increase in cost of API, which has been coming from China, particularly many of our branded generics APIs come from China, where some of the import materials have gone up by 300% and 400%, and many of the products are coming under price control. So suddenly now we decide to put investment in a factory wanting to manufacture, and suddenly the viability has gone for a complete out of control. Now the question is that what could have been done better? Policymakers could have discussed with people who are investing in this country before taking discussions on price control. So I see a big opportunity for far better engagement with companies who are interested in investing in India, so that we are able to think through the financial viability if the policies are not very certain, which makes us to wisely invest in India. But I see a big opportunity. There are instances where the engagement has taken place, but we need to do a much better job of that.
Okay. Mr. Reddy, what about the Indian market? Your thoughts in terms of how much the growth rate could probably scale up if in case we have that stability of policy come through?
No, I think if you see the past also, the industry has been growing in double digits, for several years in a row, almost, couple of decades it's been the case. And then because of, all the difficulties that we have seen because of these pricing interventions, it has actually dropped to, in its lowest, to almost single digits, right? And then it's getting back up again. So in terms of growth, definitely the potential is there and it will continue to grow, right? So because if you see from the point of view of improvement in the healthcare infrastructure, also the government spend on healthcare, if it's going to go up, or at least the announcement was there if it actually goes up. The implementation of Ayushman Bharat in its full capacity and the scaling up of that, all this will lead to more consumption. I mean not consumption, but more growth for the industry itself. And that's something which is going to be a positive for everybody. So I except for lack of these surprises, I think the industry will continue to grow in double digits. That's what I think. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Monroe, what do you think about the Indian markets? I'm sure you advise your clients all the time. So what is the amount of investment as a percentage that you would recommend into India?
Oh gosh, it's a big question. I think, we look at the points around disruption on the global stage, and the role that India could play in leading some of that disruption, taking its rightful share in some of that. And it's already had an amazing track record of doing that. You look at these huge pharmaceutical businesses that you've built here in the last 25 years, the expanse to which Indian drugs are now into world economies in the UK and in the US. So, India has an awful lot of ripe ingredients to lead in the future of disruption. It has a young population, it's very technology enabled, has driven change in its own populations very quickly and very effectively, has a lot of ability to consume new medicines if we get more new Western medicines into the country in an equitable way for the Western companies. I think I'd also like to say that the worldwide healthcare system faces a massive efficiency crisis. So in the United States, in Europe, things are too expensive, they're ineffective, and that's constraining the release of medicines to markets at a price point. And if we look outside of life sciences into other industries, India's led the way, and some Western companies have embraced that. Unilever has this colossal business in India now because it embraced Indian price points for its products in a way that have served as an innovation engine to the rest of the world. So Unilever sees India as an innovation and an efficiency play for its business worldwide. And I think that's an opportunity for Western life sciences companies. It's also a massive opportunity for the Indian companies. So there's a lot of things to play for. Yes, there are a lot of obstacles, and I totally agree with the points made that changes in policy make it difficult for businesses to invest effectively. But there's also an enormous amount to play for. And I'll leave you with one last thought, which is, healthcare has gone from being a luxury to being a basic human right, not just a human need. And one of the biggest issues we face in the West today is around inequality. It's given rise to the Arab Spring, to the policies of Donald Trump, to Brexit, to the yellow vests in the streets of Paris. And healthcare has issues around inequality. There are 7.7 billion people on this planet that need access to medicines at a price point that they can afford. So I think there's a huge opportunity to play for. If every one of those 7.7 billion people spent, $10 per year, this would be a very, very different business. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think India has an awful lot of ripe ingredients to participate on the world stage.